You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. This is Force 13 Live. Typhoon Vamco made landfall in the Philippines overnight, and this morning we look at it as it leaves the western coast of Luzon. It would be in the bottom left hand side of our screen. I'm not sure what's happened with that. We'd have the close-up insert, but unfortunately I don't know what's happened with that, and it's just a full disk image. It looks like it's up to date though, so that might give you a better perspective on where it is in terms of the wider picture at least. We're also tracking Tropical Storm Theta, which is very close now to the coast of Florida. National Hurricane Center's update just came out. They've upped the pressure up to 993 millibars. Storm surge warning in effect, amongst other things, but not hurricane warnings or watches. It looks like it's going to make landfall as a tropical storm. We're covering these two probably fairly evenly on this live event. We're here for the hour to take your questions and to comment on the latest situation around the world. My name's Nathan Foy. I'm joined by our team for this event, consisting of Isaac, Christian, DeWatt, Ethan, Strat, and Thomas. So we've got quite a bit to cover. They're both code red on TCOS, which is our highest preparedness code. So we've got to cover both of these systems a lot tonight. Where shall we begin? I guess we should begin with Vamco, because that is the strongest storm, and it wasn't that long ago that it made landfall. You're just looking at Ada there once again, but just want to get some imagery of Vamco. There it is on the rapid scan, leaving the Philippines right now. Ethan, you were watching it earlier, and you think it could have been stronger than 105 miles an hour at landfall. Oh, I'm sorry, Ethan. Let's just start that again because we couldn't hear you there.
Yeah, JTWC gave it a landfall estimate of 110 miles per hour. Their latest forecast point is just ever so slightly inland, so potentially JTWC are going with 150 mile per hour landfall. Personally, I wouldn't. I'd stay probably with 105 given satellite appearance, though.
And right now, it's slowly leaving the Philippines. We've quite a few people in our Discord server have been showing us lots of videos and sounds even of the storm as it moved through. What indications are we getting on the ground right now?
Last I saw, we were just getting a lot of reports of heavy rainfall as well as gusty winds in the vicinity of the tropical cyclone.
From what I've heard, the rainfall amounts have been extremely high. In fact, a comment just came in there that the Marikina River is now at 21.5 meters and overflowing, saying that it's like the level of the river during Kitsana in 2009, which was notable for being an extremely devastating storm for its rainfall.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I just wouldn't be surprised with what we've seen with Ulysses right here. Despite it not being nearly as strong in terms of raw wind speed as Raleigh was a couple of weeks ago, the fact that it's been so much larger means that even though it's moving relatively quickly, last live stream this thing was starting to come on shore. We're live right now and it's exiting the Philippines, at least the center of it. But its size has meant not only that the wind field is far larger, so we've seen signal 1 warnings at least all the way up northern Luzon down to Samar, but the rainfall potential has been drawn out over a longer period of time and continues to be a threat for large portions of the northern Philippines. even though the center of the storm is now offshore, it looks like.
Yep.
And we get heavy rainfall warnings for the western half of the Philippines, especially Luzon.
That's right. Still, we're saying Category 1 status for it right now. Estimated winds of 90 miles per hour, pressure 975. That's our current estimate. Still looks fairly decent, and it certainly appears that it will retain typhoon status as it moves over the South China Sea now. Earlier, the JTWC thought that it would weaken substantially before reaching Vietnam. Are they still thinking that?
Yeah, they're still going with a landfall of around 60 miles per hour. I'd say that's a pretty decent landfall estimate in Vietnam, given that sea surface temperatures go off a cliff the
Right.
more west that the storm goes in the South China Sea.
Yeah.
You know, unlike Raleigh or some of the other systems we've seen as they've approached Vietnam or crossing the South China Sea, this system is expected to actually re-intensify slightly in the South China Sea. So they're expecting it to go down to 75 knots, which is about 130 or so kilometers per hour, and they're saying it'll go back up again a little bit to 80 knots or closer to 140 kilometers per hour. But they are still in consensus that, especially on final approach, the last day before landfall, this thing is going to weaken substantially in terms of wind speeds, but it still will be another substantial rainfall threat for Vietnam.
Yep. Yet another one. So many storms have done that this year.
Yeah, and I think, one of the issues that isn't talked about all the time, but even if it's just storm after storm, bringing even moderate amounts of rainfall, the fact that a lot of these systems in Vietnam, at least, are coming towards the same location in central Vietnam means that extra ground saturation is going to be a risk to the point where less rain would create a equal potential localized flooding threat for certain areas based on the saturation levels, just because we've had, I think this is the fourth or fifth storm coming straight through, at least with rainfall potential, in the same area in just the past 3 weeks or so.
We're expecting updates from Pegasa. I assume they're doing one at 8 a.m. I've not got confirmation of that. If you're wondering about what ETA is up to, let's go to that now. And National Hurricane Center put out their update at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 70 miles per hour, moving just very slightly east of north. It's 10 degrees bearing at 12 miles per hour. Its central pressure 993 millibars. And there's some more imagery there, the floater imagery now, because the mesoscale is in the middle of switching and it's all very jerky imagery. So this is the floater right now, and it's not looking particularly impressive, is it right now?
It's worse for wear, that's for sure.
Worse for wear. It's been through a lot.
Well, yeah, it came off from the main development region as a tropical wave, and look where it is now, causing all that chaos.
Just to remind people of the warnings that are currently in effect, a storm surge warning for Bonita Beach to Suwannee River, Florida, including Tampa Bay and Charlotte Harbor. A tropical storm warning for Bonita Beach to Suwannee River. A storm surge watch for the Steinhatchee River to Suwannee River, Florida. A tropical storm watch for north of the Suwannee River to Orcilla River, Florida. So quite a few watches and warnings that are still in effect, but a comparatively fairly small area that's actually under those warnings. Of course, it's still a large part of the western coast of Florida, but there's storms in the past where pretty much the whole state has been under watches and warnings, and during other hurricanes.
Not to mention, the Metros hasn't had landfall in, I think 16 years. Correct me if I'm wrong here.
Tampa, did you say?
Yeah.
So we'd be going back to Charlie.
Yeah.
Could well be.
Well, it's a weaker version.
They got
of
Emma
Charlie.
back in 2017.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, there is that.
Right. I entirely forgot about that storm.
And of course, tropical storm conditions pretty much being felt over the coastline right now. And I think, Isaac, are you showing us imagery of that?
Yeah.
Yes, here's a live camera from just west of feedback. Just west of St. Petersburg, Florida. Here, you can see the current conditions right now.
Trying to get
of
it
course
on the
it's gonna
screen
be-
just a moment here. trying to fight
Alright.
my software. There we go.
All right. You can see the waves pushing up on shore here. It's of course kind of hard to see because of course it is nighttime over here in the United States. But you can see the waves crashing over there, and then the winds pushing that palm tree a little bit there. Nothing too serious here, but just just a night you don't want to be out and about right now. Just something you just don't want to be caught out in right now. Good thing is that the storm is moving pretty fast. Good thing is that the storm is moving in pretty fast here. So it's not going to be sticking around like other storms in past hurricane seasons here.
Yeah, I mean, the sentiment, though, on the track forecast has shifted quite largely in the past 2 days. That's kind of one of the oddities about this system. We're live, into Monday, and the consensus was that the steering currents would remain weak enough that this thing would just slowly drift northward in the East Gulf of Mexico, and potentially by Friday and early Saturday still be offshore. And now we're seeing that shift because the trough that's coming to pick this up has eroded the high pressure to a much more stronger degree than initially anticipated. It's actually lifting the whole storm through Florida in the next 24 hours. And by the time we get to Friday morning, this thing's already going to be past South Carolina, weakening too. It's going to be back down to a tropical depression at that point by most indications. And unlike old forecasts, which were saying by Friday and Saturday, this would be in the Gulf of Mexico, or barely inland Alabama or Florida, we're looking at a post-tropical cyclone off the coast of the Carolinas, halfway between North Carolina and Bermuda.
And
Yes,
that would be an order of the making.
I was pointing out sort of amusingly how the remnants of this system could track towards Bermuda. But with the luck that Bermuda has had this year, I don't rule anything out.
Not to mention, there's another system. Well, the trough that you guys mentioned will be passing through to, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does look like, though, whatever happens with Eta at that point, which is around day 3, it'll be a remnant system, and then eventually just get absorbed by another larger low that's going to cross through the eastern United States and Canada. So at least on this front, it looks like, the Bermuda, it's not going to really get a brunt impact, but it could get, I guess, some gustier winds and rougher seas as the system winds down and eventually gets absorbed.
We're here to take questions as well during tonight's stream or this morning in the Philippines. We'll cover anything really, whatever you want to ask us. What are the conditions for 98L in the Atlantic? Well, that's another one that a lot of people are watching right now. Let's go to the wide shot of the Atlantic, where you can now see, you can trace for the first time where the center of that system might form, and it's south of Hispaniola, Dominican Republic. Who'd like to offer some words on that one?
I mean...
Yeah, so...
Yes.
Thomas?
So 98L has been something of real concern. Now, at least in latest model runs, it's looking like it's going to have conditions similar to, or better than Eta, unfortunately, as we do head over the next few days, ocean heat content, and basically the warmth of the Caribbean waters. If it takes the farther northward track, it's going to go up over the highest ocean heat content in the basin. Not only that, but an upper-level anticyclone, a huge upper-level anticyclone, is going to stack over this. So conditions are going to be extremely favorable for not one outflow channel, not 2 outflow channels, but potentially 3 outflow channels for the storm.
What?
So it's, yeah, I know, it's crazy. So this is something that we're going to need to watch very closely, but I'm concerned. I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on it.
Yeah. Not to mention,
It's like deja vu.
they really don't need another hurricane down there. Like,
We really
Ada
don't.
already fought them with a freaking sledgehammer of wind, water, and rain. We don't need another hurricane down there, for God's sake.
Isaac, you've got another view right now.
Yeah, this is the same camera.
Same camera.
I was able to move it here to the left here, since I'm able to control this camera. And you can see the palm tree there, swaying it there, and then also the buildings in the distance there, getting slammed by some of the rainfall occurring from the storm. And keep in mind, this is not going to be getting the worst this storm has to offer here. The storm's going to make landfall to this camera's north here. So they're not going to get the worst of it. Right now, I think they're about getting the worst of it from this storm right now. But they're not going to get the worst, like the inner core. We're going to see that calm inside the storm. They're not going to be in that. That's going to be far north from this camera. But even then, they can still see the current conditions right now, easily in tropical storm force, sustained winds here. And just like I said earlier, not really a day or a night you want to be out and about right now. Just stay at home, watch movies or something like that, and then tomorrow you can do whatever you want to do after that, because this is going to be moving at a pretty fast rate of speed, fortunately.
So that's the latest on Eta, and also let's not forget about Theta, which is also active near the top right hand side of this screen, headed slowly but surely towards Madeira, and currently has winds at least 60 miles per hour, pressure in around about 990 millibars. We're giving it 987. Anyone have anything at all to say about Theta?
Well, I mean, for Theta, at least, there isn't a ton, I guess, to say other than noting its record-breaking, status to pass 2005 and total name storms. I mean, fortunately for the Azores and Madeira in Portugal, this thing's going to kind of split between the two while weakening and unwinding as we head into the weekend and early next week. It's going to, just gradually spin down as conditions won't be conducive enough for it to maintain tropical cyclone status anymore, and eventually get picked up and absorbed by a larger system as we approach the end of the forecast period. But, I mean, just the fact that we're in the first week of November, barely in the second week of November, and this system comes in and shatters 2005's record is absolutely obscene.
It is. I mean, when we reported it,
98, it'll get its act together.
Well, how far can we beat 2005's record by? Hopefully not by much. But that's just wishful thinking.
Unfortunately, 2020 has not been a kind year.
No, it hasn't.
Alright, a lot of people are saying in the comments section about how struggling with this video feed, and I can tell you with some evidence. I can tell you with some evidence that this is a global YouTube problem right now. So as of this broadcast time, in this hour so far, there's been over 60,000 outage reports when the usual number is about 10. So that's what's going on right now, okay? It's nothing to do with what we're doing here. We're working fine.
It's not ours. It's not us. It's YouTube.
Yeah, so unfortunately sometimes those kinds of things happen.
It's been quite, I will say, it's been quite bizarre because I was trying to keep track of that for a second and then everything just looked weird and out of place. But, I mean, the sheer number of outages makes sense, especially everyone in the chat's confused as well, even though our own outputs seem fine. So, strange occurrences do happen on YouTube. That's, I guess, one of the issues when you're held to the whim of the streaming platform itself.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. We are also streaming on Facebook, though, so you can also look at our Force 13 Philippines stream. If you're having trouble with YouTube, that is a viable option for this hour of coverage. Facebook.com/F13PH goes to our Philippine channel, whilst we cover Vamco as well as the latest on Ada. So Vamco about to leave the coast of the Philippines right now, still a Category 1 on the Saffir-Simpson scale, after making a high-end Category 2 landfall earlier in the night. Now, let's go on to one other thing though, and this is great imagery that we've finally been able to load, or perhaps not. Just when you wanted it the most, it has gone.
Oh dear.
And this will be F92S, correct?
Yes, there is imagery somewhere of 92S. We'll try that again in just a little moment. Sometimes it can take a little while. So I was so ready for that.
It happened.
And it happened.
Well, I mean,
it materialize.
We are getting to the point where we're nearing the potential first system of the year there, at least in this part of the southern hemisphere. We had that subtropical storm in the South Atlantic, but that isn't really an official season based in like the South Indian Ocean, and based on indications, this thing could become a hurricane strength system in the next week because it's got some time just over open waters, not really direct land threat, but
yeah,
something to keep an eye on as an early fish storm to watch this year as this thing drifts southwards and west-southwest. It looks like.
Yeah.
I wouldn't entirely discount land impacts from the system because the Euro in recent runs has the system moving off towards the southwest, then south, and then eventually undergoing a Fujiwara effect interaction with another system that's going to form in the southwest Indian Ocean, and that may swing 91S off towards the west and towards Mauritius. So that's something to potentially watch out for.
92S.
That can't be like anything closer than like a week plus out in time, though, right? You know,
It's within a week.
I mean, the latest European run actually has been tried to interact, and it doesn't bring it close to Mauritius and drifts it south and dissipates it. You know, by the time day 8 happens on that European run, 91S is ripping off to the southeast, turning and post-tropical and weakening out. So maybe there's some earlier runs, but no new indications that would remain the case
Well, there we go.
in the latest European run. And similar thing in the latest GFS run as well. Keeps it well off to the east in the open Indian Ocean, and then drifts it southeast as we head towards a week from today and dissipates it out as it turns post-tropical. I will say it might be more notable, at least for Mauritius, Réunion, and potentially Madagascar down the line, to track the other area of interest, because that could linger around a bit longer. You know, if we're talking 5 days out or so, that's staying in a relatively similar position to where it is right now, and uncertainty at that time period past that could mean that if it decides to go to the southwest instead of the southeast, that other area of interest, that it could bear more watching for those areas.
Yeah, and just personally, it wouldn't surprise me if this is a tropical cyclone in around 24 to 36 hours from now. Interestingly enough, JTWC only had this as a low chance of formation.
It's ridiculous that they've got that as low.
Well, I think something that is important to clarify is what the JTWC's different categories mean, because their medium chance means that they anticipate it to form outside of 48 hours. I think a low chance just means there's a possibility of forming, but it's not like likely to form. It's still lower than it should be. This is likely to form, but you know, given their definition, I'm not sure if it would be equivalent to a 30% chance by NHC. So, just something I wanted to clarify. But still, I agree, it is low. And I think that we're probably going to see this be a tropical cyclone within the next 24 to 36 hours.
Question is, what would it be named? And David's here.
So he is, David, you're on the air. I don't think he's quite ready for us yet. But we had a few comments on our chat there as well about how flooding is becoming a real issue in the areas, the urban areas in the Philippines there. And as from what people in the comments have been saying, some that are in need of rescue.
Let me double check this stream. If it's not on this already, I can make sure it's there very soon. But you know, if there's any people watching this that for some reason need it, we do have a emergency hotline list for use in emergency only for the Philippines locally. That's at the bottom of the description. So if for some reason you need that, or you know someone that needs one of those, you know, you can always feel free to go down there and check one of those out, see if they might be any use to you in any emergency scenario.
What is the probability that 92S seriously or directly impacts Mauritius, and how strong could it get? Okay, well, there's only 2 ensembles right now that suggest it will get close to Mauritius, so that's probably about a 5% chance at most. So I wouldn't put much stock into that one affecting Mauritius. Of course, some scenarios have the other system being a bigger threat to Mauritius.
Yeah, I think the thing with that other system is that a lot of its potential for Mauritius or Madagascar or Réunion is past, you know, even past 7 days, because it's supposed to really linger around in a similar location for quite a while, which leads to the higher uncertainty to say, oh, when this finally starts moving, is it going to go southwest towards Mauritius or Réunion or Madagascar, or is it just going to go due south or southeast and just miss them all? So that's really what we have to wait and see. And it's unfortunate that it's a kind of wait and see scenario regarding that system, but sometimes we have to wait for more reliable time frames.
Yeah.
So again, we'll take more questions for people who can get through, but again, for those who can't watch us live right now on our YouTube page, that's a YouTube issue and not us just now. People comparing Vamco on the ground to Ramazan, the winds of Ramazan and the rains of Kitsana, basically.
That's the closest similar that Ulysses has to Eastern Atlantic storms would probably be Sally of this year. Like,
I mean, rainfall has been significant with this. We knew it was going to be significant from the onset. I believe our last forecast that came out said that over 900 millimeters of rain in total were possible in some spots of the Philippines, which is very, very high amounts. I mean, in the most mountainous regions in particular, rain could persist for quite a while.
not to
But
mention that's a landslide threat.
yeah, absolutely, and it's been something to watch for sure. I mean, when you have a storm as large as Vamco, I mean, the impacts can extend well outside of the center and can last for significantly longer than something even like Goni. Despite Goni being a lot stronger, this storm's going to be a lot larger, so those impacts, while they're not going to be quite as severe in terms of wind damage, you are going to be getting more rain, and it's going to be lasting longer when it comes to how long you're going to be getting those tropical storm force and hurricane or typhoon force winds.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any solace with this system, in particular with Vamco Ulysses, is that it has moved relatively quickly. So even though its size means that the wind radius and the areas getting gale force winds has been much larger than Raleigh. It's, I think, double at least on certain quadrants. And of course, rainfall impacts are going to last longer, even though the center is already offshore in the Western Philippine Sea now. If this thing was moving, say, I think, what is it moving at right now? It's moving at 15 knots. So it's moving, 17 to 18 miles an hour. If it was moving, even 10 miles an hour, those impacts, particularly the rainfall, would be much more prolonged and potentially more severe in totals and flash flooding and mudslide risk. So there is that silver lining in that regard.
Yep.
I think we've got David here now. David?
Yes, you have. You've got me?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm monitoring the feed, and Nathan, as you said, there's a global YouTube outage. I've got nothing showing up my end on the other computer for this event, and also it's impacted the earthquake feed. So that's off the air, but I think my local AU feed is still operational.
This is really concerning them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it looks like
but-
services
but-
like Facebook are available, but YouTube and many others are down. It looks like it's not YouTube specific. I've seen a lot of other things having issues, so it might be
Right.
service provider based issues. But we'll still do our best to the people that are able to trickle through to share some information.
That's quite a significant news story then, I suppose, in the wider
Yes,
world.
It happens
Yeah.
occasionally, but I just guess it hasn't happened while we've been live so far.
No. In any case, we'll bring you back to Eta right now, and this is how it's looking. This is the storm that will be impacting, or is already impacting, Florida. Isaac has some imagery that we'll show in just a moment again. When are we expecting landfall on this? We think it's going to be probably tonight, overnight?
Yeah, that
Probably
seems
a few hours
reasonable.
from now, yeah.
Yeah.
I said, look, it's probably maybe 3 or 4 hours away from landfall.
Yeah, it's not far at all. Yeah, but by the time we're into tomorrow morning, the storm will be probably about halfway through its voyage through Florida. I
Yeah, I
think.
mean, the latest NHC forecast count says by, I think that's 1 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, so 18 hours or so from now, a little less than that. This thing's going to be right over Jacksonville, its center, but of course the impacts will be displaced north and east of the center. And that by the time we get to Friday afternoon, it's going to be off the shore of the Carolinas. By Saturday morning, it's going to be dissipating between, North Carolina and Bermuda. So, I mean, again, it's hard to really understate the massive shift in track. We talk about how, storms will go outside the 5-day cone, about a little less than one in every 3 times. This isn't just going outside the 5-day cone from 2 days ago. This is destroying it, per se.
I
2
just
days
want to
ago.
know, but I want to know what makes them so sure, because you look at the floater imagery over the last 6 hours as we saw the last visibles, it was still moving pretty much due north.
Well, I think it's a combination of that changing a bit since then. We've obviously seen a more drag towards the coast in the recent hour or so, particularly the last 2 to 3 hours at most. But also because this trough coming in, or it's already dug in, has eroded away at the area of high pressure and will continue to do so at a better point. And it's also further south to the point where it's easier for it to capture Eta and pull it up. They were initially expecting that the trough in the system wouldn't really connect and it would just allow it to meander northward slowly as it eroded away at the Bermuda High. Now it's pretty clear that they're going to link up and drag the storm away.
Okay, well, there you have it. Let's see if we've got any more questions at this point. Will we be doing landfall coverage on Eta? This is probably the closest we'll get to it if it makes landfall overnight. But I think we'll be having video updates at some point. Thomas, you were talking about doing one tonight, I think, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
Considering how YouTube's having issues, maybe that might be for the best if it's back online in about an hour or two. But we'll see where we end up. Let's see what else we've got. Not much else just now. But to reiterate the information regarding Eta on the coast of Florida is that a storm surge warning and a tropical storm warning is in effect from Bonita Beach to Suwannee River, Florida. Let's concentrate a bit more on the Philippines then at this point, where Vamco is now leaving the coast. And I'm just checking again to see whether any new information has come out or not. I'm not sure whether we are to expect. Yes, there has been an 8 a.m. So let's just cut across once again to show you the latest on Vamco. Well, there it is. They still have Signal 3 in effect for parts of Luzon, and that now is only the western part really. Metro Manila is still in it, and hopefully I can show you this graphic. Nope, we're having trouble with this one again. Sometimes you have to keep trying with these graphics, but at some point I'll be able to show you on the map. The western part of the Philippines still under Signal 3. A lot of the areas on the east coast that were under Signal 3 now are no longer. We're not getting that working at all. There's our setup. Okay, wonderful. And that's the view in Florida right now, whilst I wait to get this imagery loaded up. So Isaac, any more that we're seeing along the coast there right now?
Well, the wind has picked up a little bit here in the past few minutes. Now I would guess maybe gusts up to maybe occasionally 60, probably sustain about 40, 50 miles an hour or so. And here's that's the wide view of what's currently going on there. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit here to the waves, so you can see the wave action a little bit better. Still about the same in terms of the wave action. But like I said, before, just really at night you just want to stay inside and just wait this thing out. It's not going to be with you guys for a long time. It's going to be in and out pretty fast. There you go. You can see the surf there a little bit. Really blurry there, but you can see some of the surf there. Let me see if I can pan back out again so you can get a wider perspective of things. But yep, that's pretty much about it.
We've got the latest map now for the Philippine warning. So this is how it looks as of 8 a.m. this morning, local time. Pegasus Severe Weather Bulletin number 20. So you can see Signal 3 warnings still in effect for A large chunk there of western Luzon, as far south as Cavite and Pangasinan in the north. Signal 2 warnings still in effect for large parts of central Luzon, as far north as Isabela and Ilocos Sur, and halfway down Quezon. Also still in effect for the northern part of Mindoro. Signal 1 in effect for the rest of Mindoro, Marinduque, and also into Camarines Sur. Also further north, as far north as Abra, as it was at the last update.
Got some drop zones.
So those are the latest warnings for the Philippines, and those will continue to fade away later on.
Yeah, probably within the next 6 hours or so, you see most of the Signal 3's gone, and then, tomorrow morning probably has all the Signal 2 and 1 warnings gone as well. But, I mean, it really goes to show, even though the center of this system is offshore, substantial impacts, prompting at least Signal 2, are still in place over most of Luzon right now. So, very substantial storm.
Warnings too.
Okay, now Ethan, we're looking at radar imagery here.
Yeah, I've got radar imagery currently pulled up on my screen. And the center of Theta is somewhere around here. And it's moving towards generally the north-northeast right now. Probably going to make landfall overnight. But a bulk of the rainfall threat, as you can see, is on the eastern side of the circulation, which is over land. We've also been having a few tornado warnings, mainly around this area south of Tampa, as well as near St. Petersburg. So we've had several tornado warnings there. I believe we also had a confirmed tornado near Naples earlier today. So there's certainly tornado threats ongoing, and wouldn't surprise me if we're seeing a lot of heavy rainfall around this area of the coastline right now.
Yeah, you can certainly see that there. What do we think's over there on the left side? Anything much?
The radar can see over there, so I'm not sure what's over there. Probably.
I can tell you from infrared satellite that there's not much at all. Most of the convection is being sheared to the eastern side, so the western side has virtually no convection. It just has an outflow boundary on infrared. So I think that the radar is accurate there. I don't think that's the radar not being able to read it. I think there really isn't much at all on that other side.
More questions? Is Ada's structure currently improving or degrading? I think we can answer that question based on what we just said there. Yep, degrading. And how much of an impact?
Very much falling apart.
And how much of an impact is dry air having on its overall structure?
Putting a pretty decent dent on the system here. I mean, if this dry air here and some of these cooling sea surface temperatures weren't here, probably looking at a different scenario than we are now. But really fortunate that, of course, we're in kind of mid-November here, and Ada's, of course, not following the fact that it's mid-November right now. But because of that, we're looking at a weakening tropical storm here, not strengthening tropical storm or hurricane at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty remarkable. This thing managed to become a hurricane again earlier today, even for just a brief period, considering everything that it's been fighting against during the past day. The water vapor imagery shows very well the pure mass of dry air west of the center of circulation. So the fact that it's been able to persist despite that to this point is pretty impressive in itself. I mean, like Isaac said, if this were August, it'd probably be a much different story. Fortunately, that isn't the case. But I mean, this system's, been around for a very long time. At this point, through its first phase in Central America, Cuba, through the Florida Keys, and now it's coming back to Florida again. I mean, this is advisory number 46, so we're over 11 days into this system now.
Keep in mind the record for longest duration of an Atlantic storm in November is tied with two storms. I completely forgot the names of them, but they both lasted about 13 days.
Yeah, and this will probably get close to that record, to be honest with you, because it's expected to survive until at least Friday afternoon right now, which would be a little over... If it survives to Friday afternoon, it's 13 and a half days. So If it gets to Saturday morning, it's 14. So it's going to be close. This system has been alive basically the entire month, whether it be as a tropical depression in the Caribbean Sea, its hurricane phase, major hurricane phase in Nicaragua, its track over Central America and weakening, becoming a tropical storm again in the Caribbean Sea, going over Cuba, the Bahamas, Florida, into the Gulf of Mexico, impacting Cuba again, becoming a hurricane again, and now coming back into Florida. So it's been here the entire month, basically.
Let's take a look again at the Western Pacific, because you had a question there. Is there any AOIs, areas of interest, behind Vamco? I hope not, they said. And I can tell you that unlikely right now. There is a system with a minute chance of developing in the next week, which I think might be that little bit of area there near the Marshall Islands. But there's nothing really on the radar. Long-range models suggesting, though, that there could be an active period again at the end of November into early December, but that's a little way out yet, and we'll see when we get closer to the time. But at last, the Western Pacific should have a break now, after Vamco dies off.
A long overdue one, specifically for the Philippines and Vietnam, to tell you the truth. Although I will note, just because there won't be tropical cyclone activity necessarily, doesn't mean that the general monsoonal pattern won't still be bringing, general flooding risks to areas like Vietnam, like the Philippines. So people should still be on guard and staying up to date with the latest general forecast, regardless of not really having typhoons around.
Wow. So, Vamco made landfall as a high-end Category 2 overnight. What time exactly was the landfall in the end?
Oh, I'd have to check.
We were
here.
on the air when it made its first landfall in the islands off Luzon. But then it made landfall pretty much where we said it would, on the border between Quezon and Aurora, if I'm not mistaken.
That first landfall happened at 10:30 p.m. according to Pagasa last night.
Yeah.
So. That's what I know.
And its influence still extends fairly far. Oh, we're looking at the Eastern Pacific now as well. Actually, there is something to talk about here at least. There is that area of interest that's now, I believe, got a 30% chance from the National Hurricane Center.
Correct. Yep. It's. Go ahead.
I think we've given it a 30% as well, but I'd be very hesitant to give it much more given the track record of the Eastern Pacific this year. Ethan, any thoughts?
Well, it's really another one of those situations where it's going to form later down the line. We're really looking probably into early next week as a potential formation area, time-wise. So, and if it does end up forming, it'll remain weak.
Okay, and checking back in the Atlantic, this is the wide shot. Eta on the left-hand side, the record-breaking Theta on the right-hand side of the image. Should we just explain exactly what major records 2020 has been responsible for in the Atlantic this year?
Earliest formation dates for many of the season storms, tropical cyclone, record number of total tropical storm strength systems in a hurricane season. The previous record was 28, set by 2005. This one, with the formation of Theta, is now at 29, and there's many other records besides that as well. It's just incredible. First use of the name Theta as well. First use of the name Eta as well too. So just a really crazy and wacky season just all around here.
Any others?
Tropical,
Yeah,
not tropical, Hurricane Delta reaching Cat 4 peak in the Caribbean was the first major hurricane in the Western Pacific. It was the first major Western Caribbean hurricane since Hurricane Rita in 2011. and first major hurricane period in the Caribbean, I believe, since Hurricane Maria in 2017.
So,
The list just goes on and on.
I'm sort of playing the viewer a little bit here because we aren't getting many questions through because of the issues. But I imagine that a lot of people would ask about the future track and intensity of 98L. The situation at the moment not looking particularly great for Central America, Honduras in particular, with the latest model guidance.
It's looking like it could be problematic. Latest model guidance has not been kind to it. I'll pull up the GFS real quick. This is the GFS model on my screen.
Hold on a minute.
We can. Hold on.
I'll try and get that on the screen as soon as I can. It's models time.
Good.
Here we go.
But yeah, this is currently, first of all, something to note is that the GFS does have this being a fair bit more broad than we think it actually is. But regardless of that, you can see a system does develop, and it starts to strengthen very quickly. This is not good news. And then we have a strange predicament. Now you're going to see a solution here where this goes south, straight into Honduras, and dissipates. But if we actually take a look at the current model guidance for 98L, the GEFS ensembles, you'll see the ensemble mean actually takes it a fair bit north.
Oh no.
Now, in the event that would happen, this isn't good news because, if we assume that the storm develops in about 48 hours, around the 48-hour point that the GFS ensembles have given, the highest ocean heat content in the Atlantic Basin as a whole is in this pink circle I've just drawn. That is where, and this is going to be sitting over that for over 24 hours with virtually no shear and an upper-level anticyclone, which is going to give it the polar outflow channel, the equatorial outflow channel, and again, I've heard that there are some signs that we could get a third outflow channel, which would be crazy for the storm. And, conditions are looking quite good for rapid intensification, even in November, unfortunately.
And we're in mid-November.
Yeah,
we're in mid-November.
I don't think it would be unreasonable to say at this point it's more likely than not 98L will be a hurricane, despite the fact it hasn't even formed yet. And I'd say that there is a decent chance that it gets to major hurricane status already.
It's just one of these years, isn't it? Sometimes you see storms in the Caribbean in previous years, and you say, "Oh, it might not get to tropical storm status. Never mind hurricane." And here we are, calling hurricanes before they've even formed with almost certainty.
Well, what I will say is that all the statistical guidance that is currently out, based on the statistical, based on the environmental conditions that it will be encountering, all three of those models bring it to at least hurricane strength before day 6. Most of them, I think, do it by day 5, if not very slightly after. So, it's not wrong considering the expected environmental conditions that despite the time of year that we could easily see a hurricane out of this. I'm still waiting to see some more dynamical models actually start to initialize specifically on the storm so we can get more direct intensity guidance. But it would not be surprising whatsoever to also see those be supportive of a potential hurricane in the Western Caribbean Sea.
So that's the GEFS ensembles there. I lost my word for a minute. Anything else of note with the models right now? I suppose for Vietnam, perhaps, it might be interesting to have a look at what they've got for Vamco right now.
Yeah, so I can take a look real quick at what we've got when it comes to models for that. One of my favorite models that people that have been on these streams frequently know I use is the H-Wharf. And the H-Wharf has Vamco emerging off the coast by around 2 hours from now. The storm is at 972 millibars. I'm going to show the rain here because the storm's going to slowly weaken, likely before it hits land. Could hit land as a typhoon. It's actually at 967 here.
Oh,
wow,
boy.
H-Wharf in latest run has a typhoon impact.
There we go again.
A Category 2 typhoon impact. Yes.
It is notable the HWRF has been the upper intensity guidance for most systems. And
It
this
should
is
be
not
noted
inclusive.
that
It did do this for Raleigh as well, and Raleigh, of course, weakened more substantially before impacting Vietnam. So I wouldn't
should
hold that
be
to the highest
noted.
regard.
It should be noted that I think a lot of the reason for this is because the H4 for some reason shows deepening upon landfall despite the sea surface temperatures going off a cliff. And then also something else is I think that it contracts the storm a fair bit, which is actually due to the wind field contracting because the storm's weakening, but for some reason the H4 takes it as same pressure, so higher wind. I think that a Category 2 solution is unlikely. I'd say a tropical storm landfall is the most likely solution at this point. But I think the general thing is going to be rainfall. That's probably going to be our biggest concern with this system. And the H-Wharf, which again is one of my favorite models. It's been, after looking at some verification statistics, one of the most accurate models of the year. But I mean, you know, this is the rainfall graphic for it. And don't pay attention to this maximum rainfall on the bottom. That includes the mountains and stuff on in the Philippines. So ignore that 35 inches. But you can see there are a couple points of above 16 inches of rain still possible. 4 places in Vietnam. I believe that's roughly 400 millimeters-ish. Something like that. So, you know, that's a lot of rain. And that's not something to scoff at all if you're in Vietnam. So the flooding threat does remain. I believe the last CDPS that we had for Vietnam was, yes, it was a stage 4 on the CDPS scale for Vietnam.
You said 16 inches there, yeah?
I believe so, yeah.
So that would be around 600 millimeters.
Yeah, I mean, the GFS model shows pretty consistently a good portion of north-central areas in Vietnam getting at least 400 millimeters of rainfall. You probably see localized amounts up to 600 based on the current forecast. The most notable thing, at least for Vietnam right now, is that rainfall forecast has shifted north over the past 2 days. So it isn't expected to be quite in the exact same area as Raleigh was. It is expected to be, or Goni, it's expected to be a bit north of that at this point in time. Although that can always change with, you know, a few days out variance in the track and stuff.
Absolutely. We'll see what exactly this storm does do with time, but it is really it's been remarkable how many storms have hit the Philippines in the past, how many weeks now? 2-3 weeks-ish? I mean, we had Malave, then we had Goni. Etsani was supposed to hit, luckily it went north, it only impacted some islands up there, and now we have Vamco. So, I mean, it's been a crazy past few weeks for the Philippines, especially if you're in Luzon. It's not been a good few weeks for you.
So, Vamco, thankfully, is about to leave the Philippines, though, right now. Still, Signal 3 warnings will remain for a little while longer. We expect that they'll probably be almost completely gone by the next update, which will be at 11 AM. And then the storm moves towards Vietnam, as we saw. There's some good imagery from Thomas.
I mean, Vamco has been emerging off the coast. It's clear that its core, which has actually been having waning convection around the center as of recently, is well off the coast. That eye wall is off the coast at this point. Rainfall is still occurring, and you can see still, because of the mountainous regions over here that shift up in air, you're still going to be getting lots of convection as a result of even the slightest pressure changes, just as a result of how mountainous the region is. So tons of rain still yet to fall. We can see again mountains triggering some storms down on the southern side of things as well. So the storm's going to be moving out to sea. It's going to be moving into Vietnam here within the next few days. But I think that if you're in the Philippines, you're on the back end of this now. The worst has passed. But still, I would be watching this closely, ensuring that you know what to do in the event of flooding. And
that's the main risk right now.
Absolutely. Flooding is by far the main risk. The wind and storm surge risk has virtually passed at this point. It's much more of a flooding risk at this point for a vast majority of the Philippines.
Strat, any comments?
I mean, nothing else really than to concur with that. We've talked about this a lot, especially with storms when they're not, extremely powerful. I will note that gale winds and general wind damage will still be problematic for significant land areas in Vietnam and, of course, in the Philippines right now, where Signal 3, 2, and 1 warnings are still in place. But, like we've said probably countless times on streams at this point, 90% of the deaths from tropical cyclones are from flooding related things, whether it be rainfall, storm surge, mudslides, those related issues. So it's always important that people are taking into account the potential rainfall threat that a system is posing, particularly one like Vamco here, where even though it's already offshore its center, it's still going to be bringing prolonged impacts for several more hours, just like it did hours above or before any of its initial approach to land.
Now, Eta blowing up a little bit of convection right now. Or was. Just checking this. Yep, still ongoing with this latest imagery, the rapid scan. So, deep convection over Tampa Bay right now.
Yeah, I think that Ethan's radar from earlier reflected that.
Let's check in again with Ethan's radar
he still
if we
does
can.
have that radar.
Yep.
You can see that convection on the eastern side. It's dominated on the eastern side. You can see there that western side, virtually no convection. It's really remarkable to see. I think the most remarkable part of the way this convection is structured on radar is the fact that you see kind of a chunk of an eye wall.
Yes.
On radar. It's kind of remarkable. Normally with tropical storms, I don't see something quite that organized on radar, with basically half of it completely lacking. So it's definitely
Well, that's the
something
reason
that's
it's not a
strange to
hurricane
see.
anymore.
Absolutely. I agree with you, but I mean, if you're in Clearwater right now, you're getting battered by some strong winds, some heavy rain, and maybe 2 to 4 feet of storm surge. As per the NHC's guidance. So, I mean, this is still a serious situation, and it's going to be causing some significant surge and flooding. And it's something, despite the tropical storm rating, it still needs to be taken seriously.
Looks
Yeah,
like
I mean,
Clearwater and St. Petersburg getting the most of it right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to guess an analogy for the impacts right now for Eta in these areas, it's pretty similar to what we're seeing Metro Miami get, I think Sunday evening, when the northern core of Eta was passing through that area as the storm passed to the south of Miami. But, the detached flash flooding, thunderstorms, surge activity was displaced off to the north a bit. So pretty similar impacts, if you're taking the proper precautions and have a plan in place and are listening to, local officials for some reason you're in a really flood-prone area there, in all likelihood you'll be all right. But, like was mentioned, 3 to 5 feet of storm surge in some of these locations, definitely something to take very seriously.
And you can see the wind still blowing there on Isaac's camera as well. Trying to see whether there's any inundation there. I don't think there is.
No, not really, at least that I could see here. Pan the camera to the right there. It's of course really hard to see because, of course it is nighttime, and so the footage is going to be really grainy here. But it appears just the storm surge at the present moment, at least, this seems to be just right up against the coast here, right up around the sand dunes. There, I think you could see, might be able to make out the sign there.
Yes, that's the first thing I noticed when I cut to you at the beginning.
Yeah, it's definitely up there, but oops, I don't know what's going on there. Oh, and it just went off. Okay, it's
okay.
yep, it's decided to go haywire on me, but you could see the water there. You could get a decent look at better look at the pier right there. Well, actually, when I stop moving my cursor, you can get a better look of it there, and the waves crashing up against the sand dunes.
So, overall final impacts from Eta then, what kind of things are we expecting then? Has the worst, or is the worst about to move through now, or is it still to come?
I mean, it's really going to be coming in the next, at most, 6 hours. You take a look at the satellite imagery, you can see the core of the system's displaced to the east of the center from dry air and shear. So the worst impacts, at least near the center of the storm, are going to be in the next 3 to 6 hours, at least for the St. Petersburg Metro and Tampa Metro, as this thing kind of starts moving inland and moves at a quicker pace off to the northeast. If you're talking further inland, we're talking towards Jacksonville, that's going to be late tomorrow morning into early tomorrow afternoon. But in terms of total impacts in general, I guess a good analogy would be Faye in portions of southern New England early this year, to where it's a storm, of course, everyone should take it seriously, but generally, so long as you're taking the proper precautions and not purposely doing stupid activities like going out into the Gulf of Mexico or into the beach waters in general when the rip currents are a major threat, people should really be okay as long as they're staying in a sturdy and safe place.
That will probably finish up right here. It's been a testing stream, considering that YouTube has had a whole bunch of troubles. So if you think we've not performed well during this stream, I've been looking around all kinds of places during this stream, looking at information about this and all, trying to make sure that people are trying to get through to our coverage if they need it. So that's that. We have still been all over Facebook as well. Thanks for watching over there too, and we'll have plenty more coverage on this storm on all of our platforms, which this time better than any to point out what platforms we have. Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search Force13 all in text. You can send an email if you wish to contact@force13.com. So if the rest of the internet goes down, you can always communicate through email. And you can also join our Discord server for chat at any time with the whole community. Discord.gg/Force13. Eta about to move overland on the western coast of Florida, just short of hurricane status. It's weakening a little bit more now. And Vamco leaving the Philippines, causing a massive amount of flooding, but still Vietnam in its sights, I'm afraid, and they're going to get hit by yet another one. That's it for now. Have a good day in the east, and a good night in the west.